Is your banjo difficult to move? Do you find that after you make a nice smooth pass on the tool rest, you have some lines and imperfections in your piece? Today we'll address these and 5 more items that are probably the most overlooked aspect of wood turning: lathe maintenance. Whether you're a seasoned wood turner or just starting out, proper maintenance helps make sure your machine operates safely, but also make sure that you get the most out of your finished pieces and that they look great. Just a real quick side note is that you should always check your owner's manual to make sure everything's being done correctly for your specific machine. This is a 50-year-old General VS160. I might need to do stuff that you don't. You may need to do stuff that I don't. So always check your owner's manual. First on the list is probably the most obvious. It's the bed. It gets a fair amount of abuse and can easily have rust issues if not addressed often. I like to use these Sandflex blocks to remove any rust or debris from the bed. They're like grit-infused rubber erasers, and they work great on all cast iron surfaces. I'll put links to all the products used in the video description. Don't forget the underside of the machine grooves here. It's where the banjo and tailstock locking plates will slide. If the bed is in real bad shape, I suggest using an orbital sander with a Maroon Scotch Brite pad and some WD-40 to break through all the rust. Once the bed is all cleaned up, apply a liberal coat of paste wax and let it dry while moving on to the next part. Any paste wax will work, but I like this stuff because it smells like oranges. After about 15 minutes, it's ready to buff off and should be well protected for weeks or months depending on usage. A little side note on the bed is that it should always be cleaned and waxed immediately after turning green or wet wood. The water in the chips will immediately cause rusting of the bed. Now that the bed is all cleaned up, let's take a look at the tailstock. There are 3 main areas that need attention here: the base, the locking mechanism, and the spindle assembly. The base and locking assembly can easily get gunked up with debris and can also have rust issues. Just hit it with the same sanding pad that we used on the bed and clean off all debris and corrosion from the metal. Apply some paste wax and you're good to go. The locking mechanism should also be cleared out with air pressure if possible. This garage door spray lubricant is perfect for this application. It is designed not to collect dust once it dries. Give all the points of contact a spray and work the lever back and forth a few times. Remove the spindle from the tailstock housing. Clean the spindle with the Scotch-Brite pad and use a wire brush to clean out the spindle housing port with some WD-40 if it's really nasty in there. The hand wheel and the screw assembly shouldn't need to be removed unless there is something wrong. Again, I use the garage door spray lube on the hand wheel bearing area, the spindle screw, and inside of the spindle threads. Last for the tailstock is the spindle lock. Unscrew the lock all the way, remove it from the housing, and there will be a jam nut inside the spindle bore. Pull that out and clean everything off. Now that the tailstock's all done, let's move on to the banjo. The banjo is probably the component that gives the most indication that something just isn't quite right with your lathe. When it's difficult to move, it leads to extra frustration and possibly dangerous situations. You might not move it when you normally would and reach just a little bit further than you should with your tool. Or worst case, while fighting with it, you accidentally push it into a spinning piece. But none of us ever adjust the banjo when the lathe is spinning, right? Right? Mm-hmm. Once again, blow any debris out with compressed air if possible. Use the sanding pad on the bottom of the banjo that makes contact with the bed, and thoroughly clean the entire length of the cam lock rod here. If it's in particularly bad shape, use the Scotch-Brite pad or some emery cloth to clean it as best as possible. Use the same spray at all of the pivot points, including the length of the cam lock rod and the bushing. Again, I wouldn't take off the locking plate unless something is damaged or in need of adjustment. Now we're going to take a look at the tool rest. This is probably one of the main areas that really needs maintenance the most often. It's probably directly correlated to how good of a wood turner you are. The more catches you get, the more nicks and stuff you're going to get in it. I have a lot of nicks. So, uh, some newer lathes will come with a real hardened steel rod welded in here. You might not need to do it on that type of rest, but this type, if you just run your fingernail across the edge here, if you can feel like right here's a real bad one, any like big nicks in it, that's going to affect how your tool is sliding across the rest, and it's going to catch just a little bit right there when you go to slide the tool across. And that's going to directly transfer into the piece you're turning. I use a cheap belt sander to recondition my tool rests. I don't put any pressure on the rest and just use its own weight while rocking it back and forth to put a shiny new beveled edge on it. If you don't have a belt sander, you could use a bastard file to reshape the edge. Notice that I said you can use a file. I'm not filing a tool rest for an hour when 5 seconds on a cheap belt sander does the trick perfectly. This is a good time to check the condition of the belts. Most newer lathes will have a tooth belt. Mine has two V-belts. Check for any cracking or chunks missing from them. If there are, it's time to replace them. And that can be quite a challenge on some lathes. If you do need to change V-belts, I highly recommend swapping over to these adjustable length style belts. I have one on my joiner. They can make the job way easier because you won't need to take out the headstock bearings. I've had really good success with these style belts. Just make sure you order the correct belt length for your specific lathe. Next on the list is to clean the Morse taper in the headstock. A pipe cleaner or Scotch-Brite piece will work well. Then hit the threads with the wire brush and the spray lubricant. Try to not get any of the lubricant in the Morse taper. This is also a good time to check the condition of your chuck jaws and the live center attachments. It's pretty easy for them to get some dried finish or super glue stuck to them. This could cause difficulty when trying to center a piece. Again, the sanding pad is a great option to clean any debris from these. You may also need to hit them with a razor blade to scratch any of that old dried finish off. At the very least, I recommend you clean the bed, the banjo, and recondition the rest regularly. The other stuff probably don't have to do quite as often, but those are the most important. Not only will doing these service items regularly drastically improve the lifespan of your lathe, it'll make it safer and more enjoyable to use, and could likely result in higher quality finished pieces coming off of it. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. If the bed's in real bad shape, you can use some Scotch-Brite. Now I remember why I quit talking in these videos. This is impossible. Could take 75. Proper maintenance ensures the machine offer, but also helps get the most out of your, whether you're a seasoned wood turn safely, but also makes whether you're a seasoned wood turner or just starting out, proper upkeep helps your proper maintenance helps keep your machine safe. Ensures it